Good evening and welcome to the Steeler Sanctuary podcast. It's Leanne, Zach, Dave, David, and Bob here tonight to talk about the Steelers' big win over the Cincinnati Bengals. We went into town. We kicked their ass. The final score was 44-38. It was an unbelievable game. It was the biggest game the Steelers have had since Ben Roethlisberger was on the field. Just absolutely unbelievable night. The first half was the biggest, most yardage Russell Wilson's had in the first half in his entire career, which is pretty, impressive considering the man's been to 2 Super Bowls. With that score, we look back at our score predictions from last week. The person who got the most votes for who everybody thought would be right was me. My score was 29-27. I was way off. The person who was actually closest to being correct was Zach, who was 31-28. But none of us were dead on. And I checked the comments and nobody else quite predicted 44 points. So that was pretty impressive. The other good news is we escaped Cincinnati without any serious injuries. Calvin Austin took some brutal hits and was being evaluated. He came out of the game for a concussion. And I'm hoping we hear tomorrow from Mike Tomlin that he's in good shape and he'll be fine to go this week against the Browns because he was such an integral part of that game. So guys, in a word, we got a lot to get through tonight. So in a word or two, what do you have to say? How do you describe this win against the Bengals? Zach, go first.
Last week was an aberration.
I like it. What about you, Dave?
I think shocking. Shocking is the word. I don't, like you said, no one was predicting 44 points out of this offense, especially the way they've been playing.
Yeah.
It's
Bob,
fantastic.
what about you?
Statement game. I want to see it against a better defense, but statement game.
Yeah. David?
Speechless.
It doesn't happen to me very often, but that's definitely how I was feeling yesterday. Unbelievable.
By the way, for just one thing real quick, but for the people who follow legendary NFL picks, we all want to thank David for putting the mush on the Bengals by putting his lock on the week on this, picking the Bengals over the Steelers. That's money in the bank. Just
Sacrifice
what you have to do for the rest of the season now, David.
Yeah.
You know what
rest
you
of the season.
Rest of the season.
I if I have to do that, I will.
Whatever that hoodoo magic is you're working, you gotta continue that for the rest of the season.
And I think I'm related to half the chat room right now. My mom and my aunt are both.
I know. I was going to say that. Look, it's the whole Francisca's gang is here tonight. I love it. All right, let's talk a little bit about that offense, that kind of statement game. I mean, they put up 44 points. I will definitely say, look, first of all, this was not 44 points and you were breathing easy through this game. You know what I mean? Down to that third down that Justin Fields picked up at the end of the game. I mean, I know I was pacing and nervous. So it wasn't one of those games, but it was nice to see that every time we needed to score, we could score. And we'll talk about the defense in a minute. But with how much we scored, we had a red zone, improvement, which was big. We talked about that a lot last week. We talked about that as being a definite need for this game. Do you guys feel like what this improvement was is sustainable? What about you, Dave?
Yeah, oddly, yeah, I do think it's sustainable. If they play like this, regardless of defense, they have enough weapons to at least be, not quite 44 points a game, but better than they had been the last couple. Just keep feeding George Pickens and Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and things should be okay.
Yeah. Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if 44 points is sustainable. I don't think anybody expects that. But there were things I liked. I loved the adjustment of they were playing man press coverage, and we were dumping the ball to the running back and getting Wilson into a rhythm. It was quick passing. It was also a way to kind of neutralize Trey Hendrickson. I mean, the offensive line was pretty good yesterday, but part of that was Arthur Smith taking advantage of, okay, these guys are going to come off the edge. Like there were times where Mike Hilton came flying off the edge and it was just off and running. And I would have liked to have seen Jalen filling that role instead of Cordarrelle Patterson. We were talking about it in our chat yesterday. Overall, though, they played pretty well. And when Jalen did get in the game, there was impact there. So I don't know why Jalen is not a feature cog in that kind of offense. But Najee played really well with those dump offs. Van Jefferson, relic is out there, so he was probably celebrating all night that Van Jefferson caught a big pass. I mean, realistically, we played pretty good. I like that Pat was very involved. The touchdown was nice, but there were times where Wilson was scrambling and he was looking for Pat. I think that's a huge key down the stretch.
Yeah, here I'm basically with Bob here. I said it last pod, like they got to get Freiermuth more involved. You see what happens when you do. He's supposed to be the quote unquote number 2 wide receiver, right? So look what happened. They get him more involved. 6 targets, 68 yards. They had 4 different wide receivers or people with 50 yards plus receiving yesterday, which is also a first. I don't think we've seen 4 different people have 50 plus yards receiving. But like you mentioned earlier, Leanne, like first time since 2018, they scored 41 plus points. That was the most points combined by 2 teams this year in a game. Did you ever think the Steelers would be a part of that? I didn't.
No.
How about 27 points in the first half? When's the last time we saw that? Like, I think it's, I don't want to say it's the exception, not the rule, but I don't think we're going to see that all the time. But when you start getting Freiermuth more involved along with Pickens, and the thing about it is that they kept giving the Steelers the middle of the field. And Russell Wilson had a ton of passes caught middle of the field. How many times do you see Russell Wilson have that many passes caught middle of the field? Not many, but it's because that's what they were giving him, and he was taking advantage of that. Just keep dumping it off, and it worked out really good.
Anna Lee hasn't seen 44 points in her lifetime, I don't think. What about you, Zach?
The question about I don't know if it's sustainable yet, because I am incredibly excited. I am genuinely hyped. My hopes are up and all that, but I also do know this was against the Bengals defense, so I want to see how we do next week. So I will say I am about 50% there, believing this is fully sustainable. But regardless, we have proved we can win in many different ways, and the Steelers haven't proved that in a long time. For a couple of years, it was win one way or lose. And if we can do this, I mean, let's all be very honest. What we did yesterday would beat the Chiefs. Let's be very honest. We would beat the Chiefs if we played like we did yesterday, because they are winning by very, very strange methods. So even if it's not sustainable, it's in our toolbox.
Yeah. I saw a stat, and I didn't bother to look to see if like this was true, but somebody had said that if you took away the last 2 minutes of every Chiefs game this season, they'd be the worst team in the NFL. And so maybe if that isn't like 100% like 30-second team, I do think they'd be down there near the bottom. You have to wonder if you took away some of those like late penalties that they managed to draw, what that different outcome would be too. They seem to get remarkably lucky, which is definitely concerning for facing them. Maybe we'll get a Christmas gift from the officials, not get Sean Hockey.
Don't hold your breath. I don't know.
Right. One thing that Russ definitely did was, you didn't see one of those, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase games where he got like just one guy involved, everything went to Pickens. He spread that ball out. There was 10 different receivers that had a catch, including all the running backs and the tight ends. And, it was pretty impressive. What did you guys think? Did you think that spreading the ball out in that way had a big impact, or do you think that was just a side effect of what Russ was being offered? Bob, do you want to start?
Well, I think part of it is what he was being offered. I also think the fact that, and this kind of frustrates me, and we'll talk about the defense a little later, but the penalty to open the game that wasn't called, that led to the pick 6, where Pickens got hit in the head, I think that affected where he was forced to kind of look away from Pickens a little bit. I mean, he looked to him in big spots. He looked to Pat a lot. But I think part of that is the offense. I think the little dump-offs to the running backs were very consistent and helped kind of spread the ball around. Skoranek caught a ball. If there's a more Pittsburgh guy out there than Skoranek, I would like to see it. Van Jefferson. The only guy who didn't catch the ball was Mike Williams. So
weird.
Yeah, I mean, Skoranek had 33% of the snaps yesterday, guys. 33%. Like
they love Skoranek.
They love him.
He's blocking. You gotta love it.
The thing that was also interesting to me is that as soon as Austin got hurt and was out of the game, there was a ton of Skronik/Pruitt out there just so they could go with the run game a little more, I think. But they just love the guys blocking. Skronik's, you put Pruitt out there as well. And it seemed to work pretty good. So is it kind of unconventional or something? I would rather see Mike Williams out there, yes. But if the guy ain't getting it done and they go to these guys and they get it done, there's nothing you can argue with there, honestly.
And I because so many people were doing so many things well, I don't know what happened. I don't know if our wide receivers really all stepped up as a unit, or was it just Russell Wilson seeing the field better? But it really felt like our wide receivers for the first time all season got legitimate separation. Now, granted, it was against the team they needed to do it against, and they should have, but everybody got involved. And I think when everyone gets involved in any offense, you're going to win. And I really appreciate it. When Michael Pruitt's getting involved, I'm happy, man.
I saw somewhere, I think it was Nick Farabaugh, if I'm right, they were setting their zones back 10 yards deep. Like, we were talking about 2 deep zone. They were playing like an 8 deep zone.
Yeah.
And they were just leaving the middle of the field open for the Steelers, and they just took advantage of it. Smart football. If you're going to play like that and, trip over yourself to keep the big play from happening, then take advantage of underneath stuff. And
Yeah.
Kudos to Russell Wilson. He did. He hit his backs out of the backfield. He hit the tight ends over the middle. I don't know what the hell the Bengals were doing playing that defense yesterday, but good on the Steelers for taking advantage of it.
They remembered Pickens from last year, what he did to them with Mason, and I think they were just bound and determined, even though it still happened a couple of times. They were bound and determined, kind of like we were with Chase. Chase ain't going to beat us.
Yeah.
And I
Lou
think
Lamoriello has a good reputation as a defensive coordinator in this league, and he was awful yesterday.
Not anymore. I don't know what.
No, yeah, no.
Used to.
Yeah.
Used to. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second with this big game from Russ and how badly the Bengals defense did play. I think, that was part of my frustration today. I woke up all happy and eager and started looking for topics, and all the national guys are like, oh, there's an asterisk next to this win because the Bengals defense is so bad. But my point has been that we played other defenses that were supposed to be so bad and are only able to put up like 10 or 15 or 20 points or something. So now you play this defense and you're putting up 44 points, and that's definitely not the normal Steelers thing. So what do you think about Russ? Does it say something more about him or something about this Bengals defense, David?
Look, in general, Russell Wilson had a hell of a game, 126.4 passer rating, 414 yards, 3 TDs. I mean, he had a hell of a game, but I also, somebody brought this up on Twitter that he looked to be more healthy this game. And I think that's a great point. I mean, if you saw some of the throws he made where he's running cross body on one leg, throwing some of these passes, and the speed on the ball to the receiver, I think what we saw here is a man that actually might be close to 100% healthy now. So for that, and just to get into the thing with Russell Wilson, way back in January, before we all joined together to make the super podcast here, I told Dave when they got him, I was like, dude, I love this signing because, one, he had a better passer rating than Mahomes last season. He had the 4th best TD to interception ratio in the league last season. And I just think he was a part of an organization that didn't want him. So this game against the Bengals, we could see more of this from Russ because he's now healthy. And that's what I'm hoping to see.
It's true, because Russ did something that even Ben wasn't able to do with Mike Tomlin, and that's play like you're supposed to play against a 4-7 football team. For some reason, I mean, you remember the Raiders games that we played with Ben where he would just implode for no reason? If Russ can help us get to that point where we're supposed to play like that, then I'll take it. And I believe that a healthy Russ really, really matters. And those 10 days matter, and they're going to matter as we keep going down.
Yeah, we did talk about it, Dave, and this was the perfect landing spot for Russell Wilson. They're not going to ask him to do too much. They're not going to ask him to carry the offense on their shoulders. They're going to run the ball. They're going to keep it, under control, and it's worked out great so far. Better than I expected by a lot. I mean, especially after Justin Fields started the season, I was really rooting for Justin Fields, and for Russ to play like this is wild.
I love the way Jennifer thinks. Imagine if Russ knocks out the Broncos in the playoffs.
They could play each other. They could conceivably play each other in the playoffs. That'd be fine.
Yeah, there's a chance the Broncos get the 7th seed.
Yeah.
It really just depends on how we come in from a seeding perspective now. You know, we're in a position to win the division. I mean, we've got to beat the Browns, got to beat the Bengals on the last game of the season. I think we will get the Chiefs. I think it's all going to just come down to this Ravens game in a couple of weeks, and we'll kind of see where we are. I also kind of like the idea of, you know, if they play like this offensively, Philly gives that same little spot in the defense. Those dump offs can work against Philly. So it'll be interesting. Their corners are really, really good. Their secondary is really, really good. We are not going to be able to run the ball, I think, against them. So it's got to be that short screen, dump off, tight ends. I think that's how you beat Philly at this point. I think the Ravens, I don't understand what they were doing yesterday. And yes, it's nice to throw the ball up and let Lamar run around, but when you play a defense that can rush like that, you know, and we have that nice little wrinkle. If Philly goes crazy with the blitz, and they kind of play like us with a 4-man rush, but if they go crazy blitzing, we can go to Fields. We have that package. I mean, I think there's interesting possibilities going forward and how we'll play. I mean, I don't think Russ is going to sustain 400 yards a week, but let's face it, from the Steelers' perspective, we have been looking with this defense for the last 4 or 5 years for the offense to just be above average, and it is above average. If they're putting up 24 points a game with Russ, I heard a stat this afternoon that they were second in the league since Russ has become the starter in yards. They're sixth in the league in points per game. The Steelers' defense can win games like that. So I'm interested. Is that we'll see. We'll see. I was very down on the Russell Wilson signing. We'll see, but it looks good right now.
I want to circle back to the wide receivers for a second, Dave, because Zach wasn't happy that he didn't hear what you thought about the wide receivers. He said he wants to hear what Dave.
That's my mother in disguise.
Oh, is that your mom? Oh, okay,
That's
Zach's
my
mom
mom.
wants to hear what Dave thinks about the wide receivers. So inquiring minds want to know, Dave.
My opinion hasn't changed on these wide receivers at all. It's George Pickens, and then hold your nose.
Yeah.
Look, Van Jefferson had one catch. It was a great play. It was a big play, but you know, he's still no shows for most of the game. Calvin Austin, I am slightly impressed by him the last couple of games. He's been really good. Can he keep it going? Part of the knock on him is he's small and taking those big hits. How long can he last doing that?
We'll see how
So it's George Pickens. You know, Mike Williams. We don't even know. You know, he can't catch the slow moving train for some reason. I don't get it. Nobody gets it. So yeah, a good game yesterday, but I don't know how you can't get too excited over just one game.
And one you brought up the big heads. The Bengals were obviously trying to knock him out.
Yeah.
And you know, they laid 2 big licks, and that's why Relic Austin is just really not a number 2. He's probably a good slot receiver, good returner, good third option in a high-powered offense. Right now, he's kind of the de facto number 2 because we really don't have any other choice. But you're going to get him killed trying to treat him like a number 2 wide receiver. I'm sure there were other teams around the league who looked at that. It's like, oh yeah, that guy's really fast. I know. Let's kill him.
With him, every ball is a hospital ball.
Yeah,
It's true.
You
Pretty
really
much.
hold your breath.
I do think
Russell
Russell Wilson makes him look good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I do feel like he looks a lot better, you know what I mean, with Wilson than he has since we got him. But you're right. A hospital ball is a good way to put it. All right, this offensive line, man, looked like a big step forward for Broderick Jones yesterday. I even tweeted out a rare Broderick Jones compliment last night that I was glad that he stuck with this, because I've worried a lot. You know, he's very young. He's younger than the rookies that we have on the team right now. And so I worry, you know, about him getting in his head and all of this frustration and all of those things, whatever is going on. And so I was glad to see that he's able to obviously kind of stick with it to some degree and then have kind of a bounce back game yesterday and look a lot better. I hope that success breeds success. But what did you guys see from the offensive line, Zach?
I love that you started with Broderick Jones because I saw so much from him yesterday that I didn't see from him in the beginning of the season. It was a different energy. He didn't decide that the plays were done. He followed, and it was infectious to the guys around him, and he was communicating. I saw him head up, like touching the guys next to him. I've never seen Broderick do those things. So I think a big part of it has to do with maybe just letting him settle in. Maybe all of the moving around had stopped. Maybe he had finally gotten healthy. Maybe all the stuff he had to battle through in the beginning that we put on him and some that he put on himself back and forth. But we finally saw a comfortable, healthy Broderick Jones. And that's a guy we traded up to get. And I'm okay with that because he wasn't just good in himself. He made the people around him better. And as a unit, there were so many plays where there was a wall of blockers. It wasn't just a blocker, it was a wall of blockers this way or that. And I was just so excited as an old school football fan to see that. So entire offensive line gets an A+ from me. Just brilliant job across.
Yeah, that was good. You took the words right out of my mouth, Zach. He looked comfortable for the first time, Broderick Jones. He looked comfortable. And it's, when he's comfortable and playing well, not overthinking, you see the results. He played great. That's a little on the Steelers for moving him around so much, like you said. If they would have just left him, even if it's going to be right tackle, leave him there.
Yeah.
If it's going to be left tackle, leave him there. Don't move the guy around. Like Leanne said, he's, what is he, 21, 22 years old?
Something like that.
He only played 1 year of left tackle.
Frazier and McCormick.
It's what the Steelers have done to him is kind of borderline criminal, honestly. So I'm glad to see it. I just saw somebody mention in the chat, him mentoring George Pickens on the field. It was like mind-blowing. That's how comfortable he actually was, where he had the wherewithal to go to George Pickens and say, look, calm down, buddy. Let's go.
Right.
We got a game to play.
When he's been having his own struggles, we're going to talk about Pickens, and all of what went on with him a little bit later. But you're right. It speaks to that overall leadership. I know they went to school together, but that was really nice to see him do that.
The only knock I would have on the offensive line yesterday is Zach Frazier. If you're watching, when the ball is snapped and it's a pass play, you are not an eligible receiver.
He's very eager. He wants to help every way he can. He's faster. He's like a golden retriever puppy out there.
I love that.
He's just like all over the place.
I love that he is.
I did hear that Kaboli was talking this morning when they were coming back to the locker room, that everybody was yelling that Dan Moore is going to get paid and back up the Brinks truck and all this other stuff. And even Kaboli made the point, he loves Dan Moore. He's like, Steelers ain't going to pay him. But yeah, he's right. He probably made some money with his performance against Trey Hendrickson.
He said, Kabali said that the two players that everybody shit on coming into the season, Dan Moore and Russell Wilson, are turning out to be the two best players on our offense. He said nobody would have predicted that. But he said all along, I don't know that there's any local media that really think Dan Moore will return to the Steelers. It's interesting, but I don't think any of them think that. David?
Yeah, no, I mean, you only give up 2 sacks compared to 4 last week. The highest rated lineman was McCormick with a 79.6 rating. They did keep Hendrickson at bay. They kept Mike Hilton at bay. Did Mike Hilton even try any blitzes? I don't.
Oh, yeah, he came off the edge clean a couple of times, and Russell Wilson just got rid of it.
Okay, and then I also was going to ask, did they really dial up the pressure as much as you guys thought they would?
No, it seemed like they were playing back in that, like I said, that soft zone. I was
surprised after these last 2 games. What are your coaches doing? You saw what the Browns and Ravens were doing with the pressure worked. Why would you do that? They do need to fire some of those coaches. They're idiots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, though, after watching the performance against the Browns, if I'm the Bengals, I get what they were thinking is like, hey, they were kind of throwing the ball just deep and, just hoping. I don't think they expected Arthur Smith to come out with a plan to attack the middle of their defense.
Yeah.
Which was as bad as we all criticized Arthur Smith last week for play calling. He showed why he is he's the hot candidate for coaching jobs and why he's a well thought of offensive coordinator. He adjusted. He had the time to practice and put in a plan, and the plan worked. I'll be interested to see what he comes up with, because on a short week, Cleveland ate his lunch. Now it's a regular week. Let's see what he comes up with to go against that defense.
Hopefully,
Yeah, good point.
having experienced it once, he has a
Yeah.
better idea.
Right. Let's
They're
hope.
bringing up in the chat. Did you guys see the mic'd up with
Yeah,
Tomlin
yeah.
and Broderick Jones? That was
Yeah,
freaking
there is
hilarious.
mic'd
Just
up
shut
again.
up. Just shut
Yeah,
your
that
ass
was-
up again. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. So let's talk about one last thing about this offense. We brought Justin Fields in. He closed the game out. I mean, for only having one snap or something, 2 snaps in that game, I mean, you couldn't have had a better result other than maybe getting a touchdown. So for him to come in and pick up that 3rd down, he didn't stop sliding. He didn't start sliding too early. He did a good job. What did you guys think about the way that Justin Fields was used in that game? Did you feel like it was just the right amount, not enough, shouldn't have brought him in at all? Dave, what about you?
I think it was just the right amount. I mean, they didn't really need the short yardage and goal line stuff as much this week as they had in the past. I still think there'll be games where you'll see more Justin Fields in certain situations, but Russ was cooking. You don't want to take him out when he's playing like that. So I think they handled it pretty well. They brought Justin Fields just when they needed him. You got a big play out of him, and that's it. So it's good.
Yeah, I was shocked. Here's what I was shocked about. Russ was playing really well. I was shocked that they brought him in to run an RPO at the goal line, and he didn't keep it. I get it. You want it. Jalen's pretty good down there, but it seemed like the most predictable thing in the world. I don't know what he was reading. The play was dead if he kept it either way, but I'd rather see Fields circle out and around and see if one guy can get him versus Jalen running into 8 defenders and just getting hit. I would like to see if we're going to use him in the red zone down there inside the 3 or 4, especially spread it out, get a pass, get a realistic option for a pass there, and let's have a real RPO, not just a basically option look in the handoff. And what was weird was they did a great job stuffing the play and making sure he didn't have the corner down by the goal line. But when the game was on the line, I don't know what they were thinking when they crashed so hard into the middle. I mean, Fields is exceptional around the edge there, but they gave that to him. I mean, it was just there. I mean, it wasn't just, hey, I'm faster to the corner than you. It's, you really don't have anybody out here? Honestly, I wish he kept running. I don't think he needed to slide. He could have took off and scored a touchdown.
But for me personally, I do wonder if there's something with when you keep your main QB out there more, you get more of a rhythm compared to how much they kept bringing him in the Cleveland game in bad weather. There were so many reasons to not keep going to him as much as they did in the Cleveland game. I still think they need to use him in the red zone. He's too much of a weapon. He's too successful in the red zone to not use him. But you saw yesterday what happened with that offense when you didn't keep switching them in and out all the time. I just felt like they got in a better rhythm and they utilized him when they should utilize him the most. They were a lot more smart this time when utilizing Justin Fields. And to me, that was the difference this time with using him.
Yeah, we didn't try to get cute. I looked, and even though there were some play calls where I was like, oh, I probably wouldn't have done that, I got to be honest, I didn't see any cuteness. Let's try to do this. Oh, let's try to do that. And that was the difference. And I think in Cleveland, they just got everyone from the player to everyone got in their own heads. That's why I'm so proud of us, because this kind of a bounce back is not what the Steelers have been like over the last 4 years. This kind of bounce back from a game like that, I am genuinely proud of just the mettle that this team shows.
That's the best way to put it, Zach. They didn't get cute. Yeah.
Yep. No, and because I agree that it probably helped the rhythm as well, but there's probably moments that we don't have to bring him out. There's no reason to, and the perfect times is when they brought him out. So I loved it.
So I thought this was interesting. Let me read this real quick before Dave goes. They said, because we keep talking about this, about, Fields being so much better in the red zone, right? So Brooke Pryor did an article on this earlier this week, and I want to make sure I read it so I don't get it wrong. She said, Fields has a better red zone QBR, 92.2, and completion percentage, which is 57.1, than Wilson's, which is 8.9 QBR, 34.6 completion percentage. But 90% of Wilson's red zone drives have turned into points, while only 83.8% of Fields finished with points. And of those drives, 40% of Wilson's have been touchdown versus 50% of Fields resulting in touchdowns. And I thought those were odd stats.
Yeah.
It's kind of bizarre, right?
Isn't that bizarre?
Closer than I
Yeah.
expected.
I think
Wow.
it's because there's less attempts with Fields. It drives up those numbers a little more.
That makes a lot of sense because
I think that's
he's not moving the ball as well down the field.
correct. So I think
Yeah.
that's why that's kind of skewered a little bit there.
Yeah,
Because
but when he was
I-
down there, he'd
The
scored.
eye test tells you, you know what I mean? Like in the red zone, he's more successful. You
Right.
see it.
And that was my whole point, Leanne. Like
Yeah.
definitely utilize him in the red zone. He's good there.
Yeah.
Just don't do it
Yeah.
in and out all the fucking time like he did in the Cleveland game, in the pouring fucking snow. Like just
Right.
stupid.
Right.
Between the two of them, you've got something. I'm
Oh, yeah.
convinced.
Yeah.
The two of them combined, there's something there. This could be special.
Yeah.
Well, did you see the report? Did they want to keep both?
Yeah, that would blow my mind if they could talk both of those guys into coming back for another season or two.
I was gonna say this for later,
Huh.
but yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
There's a rumor going that they actually want to try to keep both of them now, which I'm
But
shocked.
wouldn't they, of course, want to? I mean, wouldn't that be like a no-brainer that you would want to? Do you know what I mean? Like, but how realistic is that?
From their perspective,
Steelers would
yes,
want it. I don't know if
absolutely. But
Either one of those would want it.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
No, it's okay. They both want paid, so I don't see it happen realistically. I want it to happen, yes, but there's also reality. I'm not negative. I'm just being realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Omar
Well,
pulls that
maybe
off, then he really is the con artist because
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
Do you actually think that that's feasible? Like, is that feasible? I'm with Annalee. I'm super greedy and I want it to happen, but I don't know
Yeah.
how realistic
Yeah.
I think that is.
No,
Russ
No.
would have to take a way below market deal to do it.
yeah,
at this point.
And if we get close to a Super Bowl or in a Super Bowl or something, and he's like, you know what, the next 2 years, if me and him stick together, I've made my money. I want more rings. Then he's like, you know what, take the money I would have made. I'll make less. That's hard to see actually happen because football players have agents and they have other people that don't want them to get paid, so it impacts them. But
dude,
that's the only way I can see it happening.
I could
Yeah.
see a weird
love it.
thing where Russ signs like a 2-year deal and Justin a 4-year deal, and it's just like he hands him the keys kind of thing when Father Time comes.
Yeah. Annalee says Justin
now-
Fields is too talented to keep riding our bench.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But Alex says
Yes.
if he was Fields, he'd sit under Russ for another year, hands down, learn from him, and then get a chance to
There we
start
go.
with your 2-year, 4-year contract. So,
that's easy for us to say, but Justin Fields is going to be
Yeah,
offered
I mean,
a shit ton of
right.
money, and
Right.
he hasn't made his money yet. Russ has got money and he's got rings. He might agree to it.
and a
But
rich
Justin
ass
Fields
wife.
hasn't.
Yeah.
Justin Fields wants to play. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
agree.
And there's
also-
gonna and let's face it, the draft. Sorry, David. The draft quarterbacks are trash after Shador Sanders. They're not very good. Justin
And even
Fields is gonna
Shador,
be
I'm
in
not-
demand.
I don't-
Matter of fact, I take Justin Fields over Shador Sanders.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, if the quarterback class is not that good, there will be a demand for these free agent quarterbacks, and
Yeah.
Fields will be one of them for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's switch over to the other side of the ball and talk a little bit about defense. And like Joey Porter Jr., let's just go ahead and get this out of our system with his penalties. I mean, my goodness, it was just penalty after penalty after penalty yesterday. What do you guys think is going on with him? I can't remember where we started last time. Let's start with Bob.
Bob started us out.
Yeah, the PIs were valid, but I'm sorry, and I'm going to defend him here. When you let a cornerback clothesline a wide receiver and then take the ball back for a pick six, and then you start calling ticky-tack holding calls on the other team, no. Look, Joey Porter Jr. is handsy. I get it. He's our number one cornerback. He's going to get the worst or the worst matchup every single week. Did I love kind of what he did with the Shivas in the end zone? No, that's dumb. You can't do it with the third wide receiver. But I'm sorry, if I've seen and lest Steeler fans forget, I've seen T. Higgins wreck us and just put up all kinds of points. I don't have any problem with a 5-yard holding penalty versus a 60-yard bomb. The PIs were valid. I didn't like the PIs, but I don't mind if my number one quarterback occasionally is getting called for a tug or whatever and 5 yards and a first down. It was bad timing. 4 was excessive. But, I mean, overall, you know, I'm sorry, but you put any corner on an island against T. Higgins and they feature him, and Burrow did a good job saying, you know what, I love Jamar Chase, but that's a mismatch. And anybody who covers T. Higgins at a cornerback position, unless maybe they're Corey Trice's size, it's a mismatch. And Burrow did Burrow. He exploited it.
For me, I just felt like JPJ and Pickens were targeted this game by the officiating crew. I'm sorry. Look, it's one thing to have a couple penalties in game, but when you have 4+, they were definitely watching him like a hawk. Same thing with Pickens. And my God, the guy makes a hand gesture, flag, whatever. Like, dude, they were definitely told by the league to keep an eye on these guys. Something was up.
You saw Josh Allen make the same exact hand gesture and not get flagged for it.
So, and my thing is, I don't want to make excuses for them, because here's my thing. If you're now being watched after you've already had like your first or second penalty, like right off the bat, okay, don't be an idiot and then keep doing stuff. You've got to start being conservative with what you're doing. That was my biggest issue with JPJ and Pickens. They doubled down on the nonsense instead of being smart. And that's why Tomlin made the comment, Pickens has got to grow up. He should have mentioned JPJ's got to grow up too. They both do. Guys, be smart. This is an important divisional game. If you know you're being watched, quit being idiots out there, period. And that's my whole point with this.
I'll agree halfway with that. A big thing that I heard yesterday that I didn't know is JPJ's wingspan is taller than he is.
Yeah, his arms.
That is true.
And no, and so he keeps saying, he's like, I'm handsy, but that's simply me extending my hands. He's like, and so there were times yesterday where the refs were inconsistent. So this was a lazy officiating job. It honestly looks like they skimmed their homework, and it was both sides, because Orlando Brown Jr. was called for false starts when he's known for a call, but TJ didn't have any holding calls. Again, it's like they legitimately did skim homework and called penalties based off that. And it makes it all the more impressive that we came away with 44 points. But honestly, Pickens got really lucky, because I watched that tape back, and there's, I want to say maybe minimum 4 other times where he celebrated by going over to a Bengals player and it wasn't called. The Calvin Austin long touchdown, he went right over to a Bengals defensive back and got in his face and it wasn't called. That was where the grow up has to happen, because honestly, the way the refs were calling the game, he deserved to get thrown out of that game. But by that standard, we were very, very lucky he didn't get disqualified, and he kept doing it. He kept. So it was the instigating I didn't like. So JPJ, I was okay with. I don't think that's something that is a maturity issue or all that. That's simply a really long-armed person dealing with a really lazy officiating crew and 2 really good receivers. So that's what I boil that down to.
Yeah, I got to disagree with you on Joey Porter Jr. It's been his rep since Penn State. He is handsy, and he's got to stop it. Now he's got a reputation, and the referees are looking for it. Yeah, maybe that's lazy and they're skimming their homework. You're probably right, but he's an easy one to pick out because he does it constantly. He's got to stop it. He knows the referees are watching him. They can't be. I mean, it was 6 penalties, and they were all legit. I'm sorry, they were all legit. There wasn't one, that's kind of ticky-tacky. My man was molesting T. Higgins. The bottom line is he couldn't cover T. Higgins.
Yeah.
T. Higgins was wearing him out, and he was being handsy because he couldn't handle him. George Pickens, I told you guys, I think it was last week or the week before, he's going to cost us a playoff game or something with this nonsense. He's just –
we're into that part of the season where you can't afford it.
He's all over the place. I mean, he's emotionally just, it's getting old now. He's not just this rookie kid anymore. He's got to stop it. Tomlin's 100% right. He's got to grow up. I'm surprised to hear Tomlin say that because Tomlin has defended him every step of the way up to this point. And it seems like he's finally had enough. Unfortunately, there is no other option. It's George Pickens or bust. If you can't rein him in, they're done.
Yeah, you can't. Not like you can put him on the bench.
No,
and I'm sure
you
he
cannot
knows.
bench him for one snap.
Yeah.
He's too valuable.
The guy,
Caballo said today that he just doesn't. He said, "Look, he doesn't care." He said, and I don't mean that he doesn't care about costing the team. I don't mean that he doesn't care about stats. I don't mean that he doesn't care about his teammates. He said, but there's no kind of like ridiculing or stern talking to you can give him, or he said, especially not a threat you make against him that will in any way stop his behavior. He said, so all of this shit from fans about Art Rooney needs to sit him down and wag his finger at him and threaten him. He said, none of that's going to matter. That's not what he responds to. He said that, the best chance they have to get through to him is by his
Hope he
teammates.
grows up.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The way they were trying to during this game, we saw Broderick over there. Russell Wilson talked to him. Mike Tomlin pulled him in after that DPI that should have been called. And I'm telling you, saw because I think he's been holding it together pretty well so far this season. I mean, he has his moments, but nothing like yesterday. But it was like that DPI happened and like a switch flipped in his brain. And all of a sudden, you know what I mean? He was angry and he was, acting.
he lost control. He lost control.
He lost it a little bit in the Browns game too, the last game. This is 2 games in a row
There you
now
go.
where he's been kind of an issue.
I don't even
It was
know
like
that
no
he
time
lost.
passed between the end of that one and the beginning of this one. Like he went right from the anger of that one into this game.
I don't even know that he lost control. I think it's just his personality. I mean, the whole dropping the ball on the Bengals guy. I mean, look, we've all seen the tape. We've seen what he did to Joey Porter Jr. in training camp last year, and that was his teammate. I think it's his personality to just kind of look at somebody and say, you can't guard me. Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to talk about it while I'm doing it. It doesn't excuse it. Yeah, it doesn't excuse it. It doesn't mean it's right. But I think that's, I heard the same thing with Kaboli. I think that's kind of his point is he's going to do what he's going to do. We just either have to accept it. And I think Kaboli went even further in the interview when he said, or in the spot where he said, Pickens is going into his contract in the offseason. He's eligible for a contract. You have to pay him or trade him because if you think you're bringing him back on some short-term, prove it 1 year, we'll franchise you kind of deal. He said that's exactly the wrong guy to do that with. He said he would be a huge problem if you bring him back without paying him. If you don't want to pay him, trade him because you cannot have that problem in the locker room.
I agree.
All right, so we didn't mean to go off the rails on George Pickens, but now we've talked about that. Let's shift back to the defense for a minute and talk about this defense because, oh, man, people were freaking out after this game, during this game, after this game, this morning after waking up. And the sky is falling. The defense is terrible. This is awful. We'll never beat anybody else. Zach is already meditating. David, how much did you panic? Do we need to be worried about this defense?
I'm not going to say panic yet. I mean, look, in the second and third quarter, they held the Bengals only 10 points. It was the fourth quarter they gave up 14, and they gave up 7 in the first quarter because they couldn't stop the run game. Once they shifted, but then at the end, it just seemed like they quit applying pressure. Remember, Bob, you and I were talking about this in the text chat. Like, they didn't dial up in more pressure because they were way ahead and they weren't worried about that. They were more worried about stopping the pass. And they went more into dime, I believe. And I'll get to that later. But in general, that's when it seemed like, they started getting picked apart towards the end by Burrow. It was just based on scheme they ran. So I'm not ready to panic yet because overall, I mean, this is a Bengals offense that since Higgins got healthy has been putting up mad points against any team they face. So honestly, they were just a product of what everybody else has been going through, facing Joe Burrow, Higgins, and Chase. So I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet.
Yeah, no, this is exactly what I expected. This is legitimately. To me, I did not. Our defense gets a full pass for this one. For JPJ is specific, and we talked about that. But I rewatched the tape, and My goodness, Joe Burrow played brilliantly. I mean, I don't like Joe Burrow, but he was remarkable. I mean, I went back to plays and I just rewound them to look to see if our defense could have done anything more in specific situations. No, it was just Burrow being Burrow. He put it in the perfect place. We had 3 guys around where perfect place. We had 2 guys on his legs, and he still got the ball. It was our defense did exactly what they were supposed to do, and that was hold just enough so our offense could score more. And that's how you beat the Bengals this year. Because Joe Burrow, and we talked about this in prep, Joe Burrow on any other football team is a Super Bowl caliber team, and that's how he played against us. So I credit our defense. There's no panic whatsoever in me on that because TJ played like TJ. Herbig showed up. Dante Jackson is tied for the most interceptions in the league for cornerbacks with 5. So yeah, I'm very happy right now as far as that goes. And 9-3.
Relic felt Cam Hayward's hit even though he wasn't on the field. He said that one at the 1 yard line was such a boomer.
Yeah,
Oh,
we could chalk this one up as an aberration. This is the best offense maybe in football. This is definitely the best offense the Steelers are going to face until maybe the Super Bowl with the Lions. You're not stopping Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Those guys are too good. You pay TJ Watt and guys like that to make big plays in games like this, and he did. He showed up. He got the strip sack. Cam had a couple big plays. That's why you pay these guys a lot of money. Bend but don't break. Give up just enough. Get a turnover when you need the most. Yeah, I'm not overly worried about this defense at all. The secondary, a little bit of a concern, but overall, no. This is just you went up against a buzzsaw. You did the best you could.
Yeah,
Came out with a W.
Back to that secondary a little bit more.
Yeah, I expected this going in. I said the defense playing well in this game is going to look a lot different than what we would normally. I saw people freaking out after the Chase Brown run. They were playing a light box, and you're playing the Bengals. If Chase Brown, if you want to hand the ball to Chase Brown 28 times, okay, we'll adjust to it throughout the game. But, you got T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Gesicki running loose in that secondary. You're playing that. You're not playing, you're not playing the run. So it came down to just a couple of good plays. I mean, They got the stop. The stupid penalty that didn't get called. They go up 7-0. You take that 7 points away, they gave up 31. And if you're not playing a soft zone there in the fourth quarter, they probably hold them to 24. So I thought it was actually a good effort by the defense. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was timely pressure. There's only so much you can do against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Ellen DeGeneres. I mean, Joe Burrow. It just is what it is when you're playing them. Yeah, are they the best offense in football? They're 4-8. They ain't the best offense in football. Boy, they can score a lot of points.
Bob.
They're there.
They're I put them up against anybody.
But that defense is that bad.
Well,
that's how bad that defense is.
Yeah.
Bob, you said at least top 3?
I'd say top 5. Top five.
They're tied. Them and the Lions, for me, are the 2 best offenses.
I think Philly's offense is really, really
Philly's
good.
up there. I think Cincinnati's is better.
Yeah,
The quarterback makes the whole difference. Jalen Hurts is not a good quarterback.
I can go top 5 because you can argue there's about 5-6 teams you can definitely argue.
Yeah.
Burrow's having an MVP season in a crap situation. So I mean, it's if he had a different defense, I mean, they had some breaks go their way. It would be a different year. And frankly, I'm glad they didn't. Sorry, Joe Burrow, but we play them the last game of the season, and I think being able to beat them in this game all but eliminates them as being even remotely important at the end of the year. I almost can't even imagine them playing Burrow and Chase and those guys and chancing anything happens to them in a game that shouldn't matter for them at this point. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. There's still a little bit of time left.
Only to cost us something. That's the one way I could see they play is that they can cost us something.
Yeah, if they could cost us something, then maybe. Yeah, that's true. But hopefully we're not in that position either. So some of you touched on the secondary a little bit. How did you think that secondary performed against Burrow, Zach?
As well as they could.
Yeah.
Cameron Sutton You could see why he didn't perform well when he was on the Lions, when he was put on islands, because every single time he was due, got burned. But that was expected. Like I said, this we were supposed to get burned. That's what simply happened. We walked into an oven, and so the fact that we walked out alive at all, that's the whole point. So everyone gets a mulligan on the defense as far as I'm concerned, and I'm just impressed with the fact that how they held up at all. So because secondary was a big concern for us. So very, very, very happy with it.
Joey Penalty Jr.
I like that one.
John also said that not being able to win in a shootout was on like the fans bitching list, so that should be gone now. John, silly, nothing has ever gone from their list. They just recycle the same bullshit over and over again. It'll come right back up.
Yeah, beating Cincy in a shootout is a little different than.
See, already Bob is qualifying it, and we're not even 24 hours out of the game, and Bob's already putting the.
Yeah, I'm not the only one qualifying it. I mean, it's impressive.
Put the kibosh on it already, Bob.
Yeah, it was impressive, but let's see. You know, we're not going to look. A shootout in real, it's not going to be 44-38 because we're not going to play a defense as bad as the Bengals until the Bengals. So, you know, if we beat Kansas City 31-28, that's a shootout. I don't see how Kansas City's going to score 28 points, but Philly that could be the shootout. Now, even if we lose a close one to Philly, if that's a shootout and we're close at the end, I'd be very happy with that. Then I really would believe in this offense.
Yeah, for me with this whole thing, and I don't think anybody's really, you kind of hinted at it a little bit, Zach, but does anybody think it's a big deal that Cam Sutton has 45 snaps out there to Beanie Bishop's 6? The only time Bishop got to go out there was when they went in the dime. So I thought that was interesting. They made that transition to Sutton. So now that makes me kind of wonder, because it was his first game playing so many snaps, if maybe that's why maybe there was a little more confusion. They weren't gelled together as well, to why that helped the Bengals do as well as they did. So I'm going to give it another game or two when it comes to the secondary to really be like, yeah, they really sucked or not, because now you got Cam Sutton out there way more than Beanie Bishop. That is going to throw some things off communication-wise, and just having that natural feel of what you know the guy's going to do behind you or in front of you. So, yeah, I'm okay with it for now. I thought they did fine for what they had to deal with, especially having somebody out there that hasn't been out there a lot. So I'm okay with it.
I don't know if it was
I think the Bishop thing was just.
But
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it was communication as much. There was, at least the ones that I saw, it was just Cameron Sutton looking old. I'll be honest, it was looking like he lost a step, like he couldn't keep up. That's what I saw in the ones where he got beat. Like he simply just could not keep up with the person he was against. Now, if it was communication and I didn't see it, that was one thing. But to me, it simply just looked like someone getting beat.
Okay. Yeah, I think this was a game-specific thing with Beanie Bishop. He's not a good matchup for any of the Bengals wide receivers. And Gesicki's tall. You know, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, forget it.
Yeah, it wasn't a big deal.
Even Sovis is a big guy too. Yeah, I think this was a game-specific thing. The secondary still question mark.
You don't think this will be Sutton's job more going forward?
No, I don't think so. It's going to be game-specific, I think.
Okay.
Sutton's not good enough to take anybody's job away, to be honest.
From Relic, you said there was a touchdown that the Bengals threw. Jackson jumped off, and either JPJ was supposed to take coverage or Minka. Do you guys have any thoughts on what happened there? Was it a communication error?
I think that was Minka's guy to take, honestly. I think Minka,
it was Minka's. And I don't think Minka.
That's what I thought.
I don't know if Minka even saw him. Like, if you watch Minka, he had zero reaction to that wide receiver getting near him. It was almost like he did not see him, which stinks, but it is what it is.
I know people are defending Minka, and he's preventing touchdowns and all this. He's just not having a good season. It's just not his. I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's an injury they're not telling us about. I know a little bit it's scheme related. I get it, but this is not.
No,
this is not what you pay. I'm sorry, you don't pay $18 million for a safety net. You just don't.
Yeah.
Something's wrong.
All right, let's shift topics totally a little bit and talk about something that kind of popped up today. And that is, could Deontay Johnson possibly come back to the Steelers? Now, when he left the Panthers, that idea was totally shot down because you can't take back or reacquire a player that you traded away. But if he's actually cut from the Ravens, then he would be able to be picked up by the Steelers. We could bring him back for the rest of the season. And I'm curious, what say you all about this? Who wants to start?
Well, we know where one person's going.
Right.
Because I'm gonna get him.
Sir, you're out of order.
Out of order? I show you out of order. Show you, but I'm too old. I'm too tired. I'm too fucking blind.
Like, yeah, let's keep him
In that
away.
vein, I can't watch Van Jefferson for one more week. I can't watch Calvin Austin for one more week.
Relic
Bring
says,
me Deontay Johnson. Bring me Deontay Johnson. Look, I know he's not a great scheme fit. I think I told Dave this when they hired Arthur Smith. Deontay Johnson was done because they require blocking from their wide receivers, and Deontay Johnson refuses.
You literally
Is not
called
interested
this.
in blocking.
You called
but-
the trade.
Yeah.
As a third down guy to have on the bench, you could do worse. I mean, he's got more yardage receiving than Van Jefferson by a mile, and he's about 40 yards behind Calvin Austin, and that's with he's gotten 5 targets in 4 games with the Ravens, so he's spotted Calvin Austin 5 games, and he still only have about 20 yards less than him. The dude can play. I don't care what anybody says. You need an extra weapon. He could help. It's not going to happen. Mike Tomlin doesn't want any part of him, but I want him back.
Yeah.
Bob, go ahead.
I mean, when I saw this this afternoon, and
Oh, Mark Malone is back to throwing in his 2 cents.
yeah, Blank
Calls him
Johnson is
blank.
worthless.
Said he's worthless.
Yeah, I know.
No,
Have you not
that's a
seen Van
very
Jefferson
strong
play
opinion.
football?
Look, is Deontay Johnson in a vacuum better than what we have? In a vacuum, yes, but he wouldn't be going into a vacuum. He'd be going into a locker room. And this would make his 4th locker room in a year. So he went from the Steelers. They traded
Well,
him
third,
to the
because he went
Panthers.
back to the Steelers.
Yeah, they traded him to the Panthers, who, let's just say there was potentially friction there. They traded him to the Ravens. We know Lamar Jackson don't like him, so we've seen it. It's bad, and at this point, I don't think Harbaugh likes him very much either. The only thing there with Baltimore is Bateman. Depends how hurt Bateman is. If Bateman's good to go for the rest of the season, I don't see why they would keep him. I don't know. And then if he did, hit free agency as a cut, could the Steelers get him? I mean, yeah, we could, but that doesn't mean we should. The only thing I'd be worried about there is if a team like Kansas City, who's desperate for weapons, he would fit in that.
He's gonna end up in Kansas City, and everyone's gonna be saying, "Why the fuck didn't we sign this guy? He's gonna murder us in the playoffs."
Bob,
It's a
about
lot.
to say,
Stop
go
saying
get
that.
him. You go get him right fucking now because you don't want him.
If anything, just to prevent him from going.
Any of these
Yeah,
other
Right.
teams. You
Just
don't
to
want to
keep
give
him going
Mahomes,
there.
Allen, any of these guys. You don't want to give them Deontay Johnson to pair with whoever they have. You just don't want to do it. I'm
John
sorry.
says he was supposedly late to the game yesterday.
Maybe
it wouldn't surprise me. It's pretty clear he didn't want to be in Baltimore the whole time.
I-
He
yeah.
got traded there. He didn't want to go.
Be late to every
I
game
mean,
for them.
it's
Good.
Baltimore.
I just,
Yeah.
dude, this guy is a legit number 2 at maybe better if you pair him with another wide receiver like Pickens. You saw what they can do, but they just need an actual quarterback. And Wilson is an accepting person. His just the way he is, he's just the kind of person that accepts everyone that comes into the group. And I think Deontay Johnson would benefit from that leadership. So I would do it in a heartbeat, just so other teams don't have him in the playoffs. And I don't know what's going on with him and the Ravens. I don't think he's a good fit. I think there's just something there that we're not being told because they're keeping it in locker room, obviously. So if they cut him, my gosh, go get him. Go get him
I'm
right
with
now.
Mark on this. He said you guys are creating all kinds of curses now. I'm
This
gonna
is
have to go with Mark and make some voodoo dolls and burn some seeds in the podcast space to be able to undo all the shit you guys have talked today.
that's
I've already
true.
written a
And-
tweet. It's ready to go. As soon as Kansas City signs him, I'm gonna hit send.
The
Uh,
prevention.
It's
Yeah, that's kind of valid. I understand where you're coming from on that. Would Kansas City do it? Probably. I mean,
yeah. They definitely
honestly,
gotta do it.
I'm kind of surprised they traded for DeAndre Hopkins because the reputation wasn't the greatest, but he's been a model citizen in Kansas City. He's been a pretty good player for him. I don't know. If he hit the street, it'd be interesting. I mean, I didn't think anybody in the world would sign Danny Dimes. And Minnesota picked him up.
There was
So-
teams lining up for him. It wasn't just Minnesota. There were a few teams
Right.
that
Well,
wanted him.
they were lining up once he hit the street and cleared away.
Yeah,
So
as
they
a
wanted
free
to pay
agent.
him $11 million.
Anna said you
Yeah.
can put makeup on a pig; it's still a pig.
Not a DJ fan.
Angle that
Look, he's imperfect. He's not a perfect,
Dave's
Right.
I think
Maybe
I'll
not
say
gonna
this
like
though.
this.
I think it's easy to go to Kansas City and be a model citizen because what is your like 97% chance of winning a Super
Yeah.
Bowl?
Right.
Right.
Plus,
You're
Andy Reid loves those
going to the
guys.
Super Bowl. Do you know what I mean? You're going to go. I mean, look at, Relic says we should have brought Juju back. I was going to say, look at Juju. He's a perfect example. You know what I mean? Of
Yeah.
these guys, they go there and manage to behave long enough to get their Super Bowl ring. Another topic I wanted to bring up before we end this show today is that with the win over the Bengals yesterday, Tomlin cinched his 18th consecutive non-losing season, which is different than a winning season. 18th consecutive non-losing season, which is pretty exciting. I know that some of us put more stock in that than others. What do you guys think that says about Tomlin's legacy, about the team this year? Like for me, it was a sign that this team is much better than I thought they were going to be back in September. What about you guys, Zach?
I'm going to treat this like I believe Mike Tomlin is. It meant very little to me when I saw it. I was like, I certainly hope no one in the locker room even puts any stock into this, because this is what we're trying to get away from. So don't not celebrate this. Treat it like it is. Treat it like it's a fact. It's just an everyday thing. It happened. Move on. It's not going to get us anything because we've had non-losing seasons before. Hasn't gotten us anything. So
What do you always say?
I'm
We deal
ignoring
in
it.
championships.
Yeah, I'm ignoring it. I that does not get you rings. So ignoring it completely.
Yeah,
As much as I hate it, I don't think you can ignore it. I mean, it's a hell of an accomplishment. I do hate the no losing seasons bullshit because there is a little bit of underachieving with some of his teams, especially with the Killer Bees back in the day. But Jesus Christ, I mean, 18 seasons without a losing season. You got to give Mike Tomlin some credit for doing that. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, he did it with Duck Hodges. He did it with Kenny Pickett. I mean, there is something to it. I don't want to. I've been known to shit on Mike Tomlin, but you got to give him a little credit for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's 21 straight overall. It's 18 straight. I mean, here's the more impressive thing, and this is what the media should talk about versus the non-losing season, because that doesn't mean a whole lot as far as the Steelers go. We've had 7 losing seasons in 54 years. It's nice. But it's not the thing. Tomlin's only coached one game in his whole career where the Steelers were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. That is what they should be celebrating. You tell me a guy who's got 18 years in the league and his team has basically never been mathematically eliminated. Now, part of that was Roethlisberger, because Roethlisberger also only played one game like that. But you think about the last couple of years with Kenny Pickett, even the Duck Hodges year, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, all that crazy stuff. The fact that we weren't mathematically eliminated the last 2 years, that's pretty good. That's pretty special. But look, and this is kind of why I get mad when the flyby national media looks at the Steelers and says, "Oh, they're all no losing seasons." Like I said, 7 times in 54 years, or since we drafted Terry Bradshaw. Losing seasons doesn't mean crap in Pittsburgh, okay? Playoff wins, Super Bowl wins, that's what counts in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tomlin, you're showing a history of consistency. You can know how to win, but the problem is we haven't had a playoff victory since, 2016? So that really puts in, a bad asterisk next to this right now, because right now we want to see playoff wins, man. I mean, over the course of his whole career, 1 Super Bowl win, 2 appearances, but that was years ago. Like, that's great, but in the end, only thing people talk about is how many Super Bowls you had. They don't talk about, oh, you won so many winning seasons or non-losing seasons. It's all based on Super Bowls. I hate to say it, it is what it is. Should we be proud of the fact we have a coach that can win as consistently as him? Yes, we could be the Browns, that shit organization, and never win, hardly ever. And we're not. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? But we have a higher we just have a higher way we think things should be. Yeah, expectation of how things should be accomplished. So the standard's up here for us, not down where Cleveland's at. Period.
Now, I will say that it is nice this year that we made it happen at this point in the season rather than waiting until one of the last two, because I think this season, and I'm hoping I'm not jinxing anything, I think we're going to see something we haven't seen in a while, which is a healthy Steeler playoff team. We're going to have a chance to maybe sit some players in games or maybe even have a bye. I haven't seen a Steelers team in a while that hasn't, gone straight from an incredibly emotional, we have to win this game to get into the playoffs or last really rushed weeks right into a playoff game. And I'd like to see us not have to do that. And I think we're starting to look like we're earning it.
If they hold serve against the Browns, even if the Ravens win, we're going to have playoff clinching scenarios in mid-December. Or a division clinching scenarios.
Oh, that's exciting.
Which is nice for once.
Yeah. It's been a long time for that.
Yeah, that is true. I'm excited.
He does need a playoff win. No one's debating that. He needs a playoff win in the worst.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen this year. All right, guys. Well, this was a great show today. We appreciate everybody that jumped in the comment section and chatted with us. You guys are awesome. It makes the show so much better. You can find the Steelers Sanctuary page and the Steelers Sanctuary podcast page on Twitter. We look forward to hearing from you, so please follow that. Please follow all of us. Our social media handles are here as well. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. It helps with the algorithm, which is a big help for us. So in case somebody is on YouTube searching for the Steelers, we're more likely to pop up. And we just appreciate all of your contributions. We will be back on Thursday with Friday.
Wait a minute. And good
Tuesday
bad, ugly
for
tomorrow.
Good, bad, and ugly.
Good, bad, and ugly tomorrow.
We're going to be around all week, guys.
Yeah, we got all a week of shows, Leanne.
Whole week of shows. I'm ready for the Browns. Let's go. Let's just go for the Browns. We'll be back tomorrow, which is Tuesday at 6:30 with our Good, Bad, and the Ugly show. We'll talk a little more in depth about some of the things that went right and wrong in this tremendous win. It'll be hard to come up with two bad things to say. So we look forward to having you all join us then. Thank you.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Yeah.